people really don't like change, and basically they do it. They change when the pain of not changing exceeds the fear of change, of the unknown. And
People were telling us from the study that they had taken on new things, over 50%. After 4 weeks, people were coming back and telling us that they had gone to their doctor and their doctor thought that they looked 10 years younger than they were.
hello, everyone. Welcome to 45 Forward. I'm your host, Ron Roel. Now, many philosophers and coaches and longevity experts talk about the aging process being a journey. Well, of course it is. It's a journey. But what does that mean? What does it mean to have this journey? What do you pack in this journey? Who's your guide? Where are you going? What do you need to get to your destination? So in today's episode, I'll be talking with Diana Yin, who is the CEO and co-founder of BetterAge, whose mission is to help older adults create a personalized guide to live and age well. It's an intriguing challenge. Everyone's journey is different. There are different options, possibilities, questions, pitfalls. And BetterAge has a special 3H program. It's sort of a health and well-being Google map that supports individuals on their journey to get the most of life. So now let's meet our guest, Diana Yin, and talk about BetterAge. So Diana, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear. We've had a few conversations. It's always glad to have you on a whole show, all to myself.
Well, and also thanks for having Ron Kaiser on before this.
Yes. So before we end, we'll talk about the fact that this is actually sort of a three-part series, focusing on different aspects of BetterAge. So you're one of the co-founders, so you have a lot to do with the organization, of course. So let's just begin with you a little bit before I go into BetterAge. I'm always interested in my guests. They always have interesting stories, 45 forward stories. So outline a little bit about your background, about how you got into this space, and what your goal is with BetterAge.
Yeah. My career is not a straight line. I think
Mm-hmm.
as perhaps is the case with many people who are now my age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We were always told when we were growing up, oh, you're going to have like one career, you're going to stay in it for a very long time, and then, and then you'll retire.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like my career has been anything but where I am now is the culmination of this kind of, zigzaggy path. But
Mm-hmm.
the through line has always been about making an impact and having social impact. So I've worked in the nonprofit sector, I've worked in the public sector, I've worked in the private sector. I had many, many years as a results-driven management consultant. But even then, I helped co-found the public sector practice, where we
Mm-hmm.
worked with large government agencies and did a lot of the low bono, pro bono consulting for nonprofits. And I started my career actually and it was my most recent previous job
Mm-hmm.
at Unlock, which is the inventor of the PACE program, and that's the program
Oh.
of all-inclusive care for the elderly.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot at Unlock, which actually informs what we're doing here at BetterAge. And, you know, if people don't know about Unlock and don't know about the program of all-inclusive care for the frail elderly or the elderly, known as PACE,
Mm-hmm.
it is a program to watch. It has been around for 40 plus years. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually written into Medicare as a permanent option
Mm-hmm.
for folks who need skilled nursing level of care. And it provides essentially no cost universal coverage for all of the different aspects of aging in place.
Hmm.
So it's rather amazing, and it's an evidence-based program that has been proven to work over the many decades that it's been around.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
anyway, something
Yeah.
maybe you should have someone from Pace on your show next.
Yeah. I have included PACE in my caregiving navigator guide for family caregivers, and it's a brief description of the program, but when you read it, it's like, this is pretty powerful. You can sort of sense it, and it's
Hmm.
one of these, we've got such a disparate system. It's one of the few efforts that actually tries to put things together in one place
Right.
in a holistic way. You know.
So now you see the inspiration also of BetterAge,
Mm.
because one of the benefits of PACE is that all of those, as you said, disparate parts of the sort of care fabric are in one place, but you do have to be eligible for PACE, meaning you have to
Mm-hmm.
be nursing home eligible or skilled nursing eligible.
Right.
And not everybody needs that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
not everybody is that. So what we're trying to do at Better Age is actually have that same idea that, at different points in your life, you need lots of different things, right?
Right.
And at some points, you may need more or less, or dial up or dial down certain things. And for your audience in the sort of over 45, you're not quite an older adult yet, so
Mm-hmm.
lucky. But
Right.
at the same time, there's some things that that you probably want to watch out for, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And perhaps having a map or having some sort of, journey planner is a step in the right direction
Yeah.
to start thinking about the things you might want to work on. There's a medical doctor in our community of friends, and he said that there's a 30-60-90 rule, right? So
Hmm.
when you're younger than 30, you can do all sorts of things. Let's not say
Mm.
abuse your body, but whatever you do to your body, you're likely to bounce back really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But between 30 and 60, you really need to start developing the habits that are about taking care of your body. And
Mm-hmm.
that will set you up for the next 30 years post 60. But
Right.
if between 30 and 60, you're still abusing your body, it's going to be harder for you to develop those habits that you will need when you're,
Right.
60 plus, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. So before we dive into that a little bit more, tell me a little bit about so BetterAge is a public benefit corporation. So
mhm.
tell us a little bit about what that's about. So it's not a traditional nonprofit. But so why did you go that course?
That's a great question. At the origination of my coming to Better Age, and that was only a little over 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
the board was actually the I don't want to say divided, but a little bit split on whether we should continue our path as a nonprofit or really become a for-profit company.
Mm-hmm.
And there were actually two organizations that were set up. One was a 501(c)(3)
Mm.
nonprofit, and the other was an incorporated entity. We did a strategic alignment session, and it turns out we actually wanted to do both.
Okay.
Right? We wanted to have the accountability of a for-profit company with, certain governance and certain
Mm-hmm.
metrics in place, and we wanted to be financially accountable and sustainable. That was the key, right? To be
Mm-hmm.
accountable
Mm-hmm.
and sustainable, because we want to be around for the long term.
Right.
On the other side, we wanted to really be about mission and social impact. And the public benefit corporation is the blend where you can be margin focused and mission focused. So
Hmm.
that's the path that we've taken.
Yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of nonprofits and agencies, and people ask me about, well, are you a nonprofit? My response, a little tongue in cheek, is, well, I'm a not much profit, but not necessarily by intent, but also I just, of course, as a nonprofit, people get paid. It's not volunteer work.
Yeah.
You make money, but it's directed and and it's mission driven, but it's also constrained. I mean, you have a board, and so I just working for me in the aging and caregiving area that I'm in, I wanted more flexibility to really be able to maneuver and partner with people and really promote things. So it makes a lot of sense for me that your direction. So I think that's a
Yeah,
great
no,
idea.
good.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think I worked in nonprofit for years,
Mm-hmm.
and was a consultant in nonprofits, so that space is really familiar to me, and
Mm-hmm.
I love, love, love the heart of
Mm-hmm.
anybody who works in a nonprofit, and I love the mission focus. And nonprofits are able to attract a lot of people because a lot of people do really want their meaningful hours of the day to be
Mm-hmm.
directed toward meaningful causes and
Right.
meaningful pursuits.
Right.
So nonprofits can attract amazing talent in that
Right.
way. But the one thing that is really tough for nonprofits is the funding,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So funding is difficult to get. It sometimes is not always guaranteed, and philanthropy typically does not want to be the only source of revenue for mission pursuit.
Yeah.
So I will say that one of the avenues that small businesses have
Mm-hmm.
is something called the Small Business Innovation Research Grant.
Oh,
That
interesting.
is it's a little known fact, and I really do think it needs a lot more, visibility or maybe even promotion.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what is called America's Seed Grant
Hmm.
or
Okay.
America's Seed Fund.
Okay.
And it is the funding that actually drives a lot of innovation around the government's sort of big agenda, big priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the priorities that has actually been very consistent at the national level is this focus on how we can promote healthy aging.
Hmm.
And so the NIH, which is the National Institutes for Health,
Right.
is an agency that also has this program. I think all
Okay.
the agencies have this program, and it's for short called the SBIR.
Okay.
So, one of the drivers for us to really kind of be in this public benefit corporation world is that we are officially a small business, and so we can actually pursue that funding, which
Hmm.
is not available to nonprofits. And if you can get it, it's terrific
Mm-hmm.
because it's capital that goes toward research and
Mm-hmm.
also product development for innovative solutions around healthy aging. So it's like
Wow.
perfect for us. So, Ron, the nice thing is we did pursue it,
Uh-huh.
and it's a very low success rate, 16% for phase one and 13% on average for this phase
Wow.
one, phase two fast track. And we were able to be awarded one. So
Wow.
so that was a really good strategy and a really good execution on our
Yeah.
on our part, and we're very very lucky that we were very aligned with the mandate of that program.
Yeah. But extremely competitive. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. 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 So let's talk about the founding of Better Age. So let's talk a little bit first broadly about your goals, your ambitions, sort of the big ideas.
hmm I think the biggest idea is really simple but hard to
Mm-hmm.
execute, which is
Okay.
quality of life for longer. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Americans are living longer. Um, I think, and it will only become longer. If you take the COVID effect out,
Mm-hmm.
um, my kids' generation,
Mm-hmm.
actually, when they're teenagers, are going to live to 120. Right.
Mm.
So, right. And so we are looking at a lot of longevity. Oftentimes we think of this really rosy picture of growing older and spending
Right.
time with your loved ones and being healthy and all of that. But there's also another picture, which is that with longer life also comes the introduction of chronic conditions,
Mm-hmm.
and the mismanagement or just the lack of understanding how to manage these chronic conditions can compound to lead to even more what we call comorbidities, right? The sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
multiple chronic conditions at the same time. So what we're trying to do is really emphasize the potential of growing older. And with that potential is the quality of life, and
Right.
quality of life around not just having mobility and physical fitness, but also having intellectual fitness, having social fitness, having
Mm-hmm.
a flourishing life, having a thriving life, being able to do the things that you want to do, being able to learn new things all the time,
Mm-hmm.
being in that frame of mind where getting older doesn't mean getting closer to some end state.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think a lot of longevity people talk about, closing the gap between lifespan and health span. And,
Yeah,
and so, yes, it's good to have a long life, but, what kind of healthy life do you have? But I like your even more holistic, so it's closing the gap between lifespan and quality of lifespan. So
right.
it's not just about health, it's about a lot of things that, it,
Mm-hmm.
maintaining a sense of quality of life. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
you're guided through certain values, which I like a lot. I mean, I think looking at your website, I mean, so the importance of respect, integrity, humility, all voices matter. I mean, those sorts of values, I think, are. So to me, that's what makes a difference. Is that yes, you're a corporation, but
Mm-hmm.
these are human values that are driving you.
Ron, do you mind if I talk a little bit about our team?
Absolutely, no,
Because
absolutely, yeah,
when
absolutely.
we say that all voices matter, our team is the embodiment of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, our primary founder, his name is Jim Furman, is a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, wonderful person. He was the CEO of the National Council on Aging for 25 years, and before that, the CEO of an economic equity for seniors
Mm-hmm.
organization. He will not mind that I say
Mm-hmm.
he just turned 74.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He is an amazing individual, huge heart, has a doctorate in education, and is really passionate about Cindy was on before, but is really passionate about intergenerational
Mm-hmm.
programming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's an evidence-based approach to also healthy aging, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So his voice matters a ton
Mm-hmm.
because he is in some ways our user base, right?
Mm-hmm.
We also have an 87-year-old chief immersion officer, but he has been a positive psychologist, a clinician by training for over 50 years.
Wow.
So his voice matters. And when we if you ever look at our product,
Mm-hmm.
his voice permeates that product
Mm-hmm.
because we want to be able to motivate people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as a positive psychologist, there's a certain way that you kind of can phrase things that still gives you promise
Mm-hmm.
instead of pessimism,
Right.
right? So his voice is really important to us and hopefully to all of the older adults we serve. We have a chief technology officer, Stephen Engels, who is absolutely amazing. He can build anything,
Mm-hmm.
and he has been in this space for over 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
building consumer friendly products for older adults, right?
Right.
So when we talk about software development or product development, his voice really matters, right? And
Mm.
that you can see that the UI and the user journey is really a reflection of his experience.
Yeah.
And then Mike Webb is our chief data officer and really our
Mm-hmm.
lead AI engineer. And, actually, he and I worked at Unlock together.
Mm.
And so while, we've got like a strong technologist in him, his point of reference is actually older adults also,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and the integrity and the integrity of the architecture and the back end is highly focused on privacy and data security
Mm-hmm.
and all of those things that give us greater comfort and trust in
Mm-hmm.
anything we interact with online these days,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So I just wanted, since you mentioned it, I wanted to
Yeah.
really
No.
talk about this founding team.
Yeah. That's great. So this is a good point, and we're going to just take a quick break, um, Diana. So folks, when we come back, we'll be talking much more with Diana Yin, the CEO and co-founder of BetterAge. So don't go anywhere.
Are you caring for an aging loved one? It can feel overwhelming, but you don't have to do it alone. Ron's book, The Caregiving Navigator, is a step-by-step guide designed to help you plan, prepare, and provide compassionate care with confidence. From organizing family conversations to navigating long-term care and finding support for yourself, the caregiver, it's all here. Find the Caregiving Navigator now on Amazon and take the first step toward peace of mind.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking today with Diana Yin, the CEO and co-founder of BetterAge. Before the break, we were talking about how BetterAge assembled their team and who's on the team, which is I may talk about that more later because it's a really interesting group, and especially on the technological side, because I think that's something that we're on the cusp of something very different in terms of seniors in technology or just older people in technology. And I do like to use the word older people. I think seniors. People say to seniors, and I often say, well, it's like a senior in high school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, and a comedian I was listening to the other day said, well, that's sort of seniors mean. That's like when you're a senior in high school, you got nowhere else to go, but when you're an older person, you got places to go still. So it's not like the end. So anyway, so let's talk about how you've set up your programs, and basically you talk about trying to put together a health and well-being Google map for people, so to speak. So let's talk about your concepts.
Yeah, great. So the first thing I guess I'll say is we do believe that people need to interact with the real world. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not building a platform that is dominated by the digital experience, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
are building a digital health platform, but
Right.
we believe strongly in the reinforcement, the support, the supplementation, what's the supplement of the bricks and mortar world.
Mm-hmm.
There
Mm-hmm.
is an entire ecosystem run out there that hopefully your listeners know about, but if they don't, I'm going to mention it. There's a whole ecosystem of incredibly awesome aging services programs out there.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them are funded by local government, by state government, and by federal government, and also philanthropic private dollars. So you may hear them as community centers or senior centers, or I know they still use the word seniors. It's hard to say older adult
Right.
center, I
Yeah.
guess, but
Well, that's the word people use. It's like
yeah.
fine. Let's
Yeah,
stay
yeah,
with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of programs that are also offered at like your local YMCA
Mm-hmm.
or like dance programs
Mm-hmm.
or other private gyms. So there's like a lot out there that
Mm-hmm.
people can already be leveraging. We don't want to duplicate any of those things. Just
Right.
like Google isn't duplicating the coffee shop that it recommends, right? Like
Right.
it's just recommending it. It knows about it. We're going to go one step further. We partner with these organizations, and right
Mm-hmm.
now, all of them are community based organizations that offer evidence based programs and services. So, we like to work with partners because we like to
Mm-hmm.
highlight the services they already have, right? So along the journey, we don't tell you what your destination is, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
we hope that you'll choose the destination that's right for you, like whether it be sleep hygiene or like whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then along the way, there are actions that you're going to take. And a lot of these actions can actually be supplemented or reinforced by the community right outside your door. And so we try to connect you to that
Mm-hmm.
community. So the idea of the map really starts with an assessment that within 10 minutes, we have asked you a variety of questions. I won't tell you exactly how many, but within 10
Mm-hmm.
minutes, and it averages to be about 9.4 minutes that people, kind of finish it. We personalize guidance for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we ask all sorts of things. And at the end of it, we give you an assessment, we give you a sense of your strengths. We kind of try to place you in the community of others who've taken the assessment like you, and present you with some personalized recommendations and interventions, although we call them journeys,
Mm-hmm.
that we encourage you to select. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then as you select them, then a process of engagement ensues. But all of it is really based on the idea that older adults have made gazillions of choices already in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we are not in a position to, make decisions for you,
Right.
right? Out of respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you've made gazillions of decisions for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we show you the why, the what, the how, right? And then if you make a decision to take one of these journeys, then we'll be with you along
Mm-hmm.
the way. right? And continue to show you the things that could help you achieve the goals that you set for yourself.
Right. So how do you begin the engagement with people? Do they contact you through your website, or how does that process work?
They can, but at the moment, Ron, since we're still pretty young in our
Mm-hmm.
maturity,
Mm-hmm.
we only offer the assessment and the platform through our partners.
Okay.
So, but right now, luckily we're in something like over 50 communities across the U.S. and
Okay.
it's growing.
Okay.
So hopefully, and I wish I could show you our map, but if you go to our website, there's a
Yeah.
immature listing of. I mean, it's immature in that it was. It's about a year old, so we have a
Mm-hmm.
lot more partners on
Mm.
our website than we actually show
Yeah.
on our website.
Right. But
But we're
that's how they find your partners. If they go to your website, which is betterage.net, right?
hmm
So
hmm
that's where they can find the partners to
right.
to work
But our partners are amazing,
with. Mm-hmm.
and like I said, we have something like over 50 partners now,
Okay.
and they reach out to their communities
I
and
see.
offer the tool
Mm-hmm.
to those in their communities. So I'll just highlight a couple of places
Yeah.
that are just amazing. So we work with St. Patrick's Senior Center in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
They used to offer, I don't know if they still do it. So, Patrice, if you don't do it anymore, I'm sorry for mentioning it, but they had a partnership with a local supermarket and they would offer, coupons to the supermarket for, taking the assessment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so every partner will do it a little bit differently to
Mm-hmm.
get the word out and incentivize hopefully people to take it. But we also ask people once they're on the link why they take this assessment, and I want to say something like 50, I should have this number at my fingertips, something like 50% actually take it because they're curious.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know what we'll say about their health and well-being status, right?
Mm.
So they find us
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we find them.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. So I guess you have a three-stage program. Let's talk a little bit about that. It's
hmm
triple A's, I guess: awareness, action, and achievement. So
hmm
let's unpack that a bit.
Okay. So, a lot of people really don't know where they stand in terms of their well being. They may have a
Okay.
very good sense of where they stand in terms of their medical issues, right, or their medical profile. But
Mm-hmm.
we really believe that you are more than your medical record. Your
Right.
medical record only, and if you look at, your own medical record, it is not always inspiring. Right?
Right.
Like, so we really believe that an individual is made up of more than what their medical record says, and we also take heart in a lot of the evidence that shows that your health outcomes are actually only 20% driven by your clinical settings, right?
Okay.
And the other 80% is driven by all this non-clinical stuff, right? Some of it
Mm-hmm.
is genetic, some of it is behavior, some of it is, environment, right? But 80% is actually not what you're getting from a clinical setting, right?
Mm.
So the awareness of that other 80% is very important to us. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't have a sense of, how they're doing vis-a-vis their sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, um, they may have a sense of their meaning and purpose, which is actually very important as we
Mm-hmm.
get older to continue to have meaning and purpose. They
Mm-hmm.
may have a sense of their social supports, but they don't have a snapshot of how that fits in
Mm-hmm.
the overall profile of their well-being, right? So we ask a lot of things about folks. Only one is actually related to their health, their clinical health status, right?
Right. So there are other domains of well-being. Is that right?
So many other
Okay.
domains, right?
Okay.
And um, um, so bringing that level of awareness, we call it measuring what matters, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And we try to standardize what matters. We have a whole um, theory of change around the dimensions of
Mm.
well-being. We start with that as a premise, and that's not an invention of our own, although I think that we've refined it quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of evidence out there, right,
Mm-hmm.
about what these healthy domains, of these health and well-being domains are. And we really start with the evidence base, right? And the core assessment we use is actually was first originated by the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, the IHI. So, and then from there, we prompt people to take action, either again online with us or with a partner that we connect them with. And then the achievement piece is premised on some level of motivation theory, right? Where if you give people choices, if you give people small sets of choices, you give people reason to believe, like why they're doing this, and they buy into that, then they're more apt to make these choices and take these actions and self-prescribe goals, right? And we break down these actions to very small steps. And Ron, you may know this already, but you should never tell somebody to lose 20 pounds. Like that just, people don't just say, I mean, it's the rare person who'll be like, okay, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. You told me to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Like, it's like hard to imagine for me, myself, like being told that I'm just going to go do it. But you break it down into meaningful steps.
Right.
And those can be achieved, right? And then before you know it, you've taken these small steps every day and they've accumulated into a new routine, a new habit for your day, and big health outcomes or big health dividends, health and well-being dividends, right? So that achievement piece is not about one big epic statement of change.
We're going to take another quick break. So, folks, again, we'll be talking much more with Diana Yin when we come back from the break, the CEO and co-founder of BetterAge. So come right back.
Do you like what you're hearing? Well, we've got plenty more where that came from. Head over to 45forward.org, where you'll find a full archive of over 200 episodes of the 45 Forward podcast, all hosted by Ron. Each week, Ron talks with fascinating guests, experts, advocates, and everyday folks, sharing insights and stories to help you live a better, fuller life in your second half. We cover everything from health and caregiving to careers, relationships, and finding purpose, whatever helps you move forward with clarity and confidence. That's 45forward.org. Check it out and keep moving forward. 45 Forward.
Welcome back to 45 Forward. Once again, this is your host, Ron Roel, talking with Diana Yin, the CEO and co-founder of BetterAge. Before the break, we were talking about their program of awareness, action, and achievement, getting people through change. And we were talking about the importance of incremental change, which I think is something that is really important and not emphasized enough. I'm glad you do it, because I think that we're in a society where it's always like, oh, you can do this, and I lost 40 pounds in 20 days, and this sort of thing. So we undervalue, the importance of incremental change. And I think, I remember actually years ago when I was covering business and I was covering business management, and they were looking at, Japanese style of management, and there was their theory of continuous improvement. And, that was based upon the same sort of thing where before, at one point, Japanese cars were like really inferior to American cars.
Right.
And then they said, well, let's look at American cars. And then the Japanese companies would say, well, let's just change this a little bit. And, well, let's try this. And then, 5 or 6 or 7 years later, you'd have a completely new car based upon all these incremental changes that was really dramatically different. So I think that, it is sort of a narrative that's important to go against, our current infatuation with fast change, like overnight change. You can change, because it just doesn't happen. It doesn't stick. And I think to your point, it requires building in new habits, and that takes time and persistence.
Yeah. I think there's even I think the book is called Make It Stick.
Oh, yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
called that. And one of the examples, I wish I could remember the author, but one of the examples in the book is um, um, trying to develop new habits. And I think one of them was around exercise.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that the idea is that you already have some habits, right? So you
Hmm.
brush your teeth every night and every morning, right? You already have a habit around that. But what are you doing when you brush your teeth? You're standing there.
Hmm.
And so the idea of trying to make a new habit stick is to do some toe raises while you're brushing your teeth, right? And
Hmm.
before you know it, you've actually done like 3 sets of 10 or 12 toe raises.
Hmm.
Um, so I think those kinds of things are like kind of life hacks, right? And little tips,
Hmm.
and that's kind of the same spirit of the idea of small steps, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you've talked to me before about a lot of this is really comes down to managing change, you know.
Right.
So talk about that because that's something that's, again, people talk about a lot about managing change. Not so easy. And so how do you
Hmm.
help people think about that? Because that's what's happening over the course of your life.
Right. Right. Um, so I mentioned Ron, our chief psychology
Hmm.
officer, and he's the one who really has gotten us thinking about aging as a process of change. We maybe are introduced to, oh my gosh, we're aging. If we
Hmm.
have a big milestone birthday, right? Maybe some
Right.
of your listeners are going to hit a milestone birthday, right?
Hmm.
And that feels like, okay, I'm being reminded of my age. Um, your first diagnosis, you know, pre-diabetes
Hmm.
or hypertension or watch this or your first colonoscopy or all those things
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
are we anchor to those things as milestones of aging. And aging is not really like that,
Hmm.
right? It's the one thing. I was at a conference the other day, and as a way to kind of step into what I was doing, because it was actually a conference that had nothing to do with aging and had more to do with technology. And I said, there is one thing that we're all doing right now at the same time. Right. And that's,
Right.
and I asked people to guess, and, they're like, oh, learning about AI or, I was like, well, we're actually all aging at this very moment. And of course we all are. And, you know, subconsciously, that, but to bring that to the conscious level, right. And really then say, like, in order to embrace this journey, we have to think about it as kind of an everyday process, right?
Hmm.
Or an conscious process, right?
Right.
And any time we bring on change, there's going to be tension and friction, because that is what change is,
Hmm.
right? It is not the same. And so there's always going to be tension, there's always going to be friction, and we just have to recognize it. When we bring it to the conscious level, we're more able to tackle it or address it or do things about it, and it's not as then it doesn't feel as big a task,
Hmm.
right? I or like, versus denying that I'm aging, or whatever it
Right.
is,
Yeah.
right? Right. So I was also thinking about innovation as you were talking, Ron,
Hmm.
because I thought what you said was really insightful. um, Change is usually, let me think about this, is can be often tied to innovation,
Hmm.
right? Like a new technology, we all have to get used to it. That's change, right?
Right.
A change. Well, let's just stay with that one, right? So we can also think about aging as a journey of change and also innovation. We can
Hmm.
innovate in our own lives, right?
Right.
We can innovate our practices. We can innovate how we approach things. We can innovate our mindset. We can innovate all sorts of things around our lives, right?
Right.
And whenever we do that and take on that challenge, we're also introducing change, right?
Yeah.
Consciously introducing change. So
Yeah.
anyway, I could go on and on, but I won't,
Yeah. No.
about change.
No. I think. Well, I think it is an important thing, and I think part of it is that we basically underplay how difficult it is for people, even positive change. So
Yeah.
I think that one of my little formulas is that people really don't like change, and basically they do it. They change when the pain of not changing exceeds the fear of change,
Mm.
of the
Mhm.
unknown.
Mhm.
And so I think we get into our habits, and there in some cases to change that habit, um, the trigger has to be there has to be some sort of replacement. Like, well, what takes the place of this habit that is an improvement, or in some way motivates me enough to make this change, and to because people get stuck in patterns, even if they're bad ones, because they're comfortable and they know them, and even though it's bad, it's like bad relationships. Oh, okay, well, but
Yeah.
at least I
Yeah.
know what it is. But I think that you know, and I think that innovation sometimes comes, through that. You're at a place where you're stuck, and so I say, well, okay, well, this is not going anywhere. I guess it's sort of a notion that some therapists have talking about is called, all right, here you are. It's radical acceptance, not going to change. So what do I do
Mhm.
now? I'm not going
Mhm.
to stay here, but what is the innovation that's going to take me to think about it in another way? And
Yeah.
I think that but living longer and thinking about your well-being, I think encourages that kind of thinking. So it's a broader kind of thinking that I think you know
Mhm.
places like BetterAge are important catalysts for that, that thought process.
Yeah. Yeah. I was so impressed with this, young college guy that I met at a friend's dinner. Um, I have a huge problem with sleep. I'm just gonna say, like,
Okay.
when you were talking, I was like, well, I have a bad habit, and that's I don't have good sleep hygiene. That's just like a bad
Mm-hmm.
habit. But I work really hard, so but
Mm-hmm.
I met this college kid. I was so impressed with him because he went to bed, and he's in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
So college, you conjure up, you
Yeah.
know, late night partying, whatever. But he went to bed most nights by 9 or 10 o'clock. Now he's an
Mm-hmm.
incredibly accomplished kid, young person, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he went to bed every night at like 9 or 10 o'clock. I'm like, how do you manage to do that? And why do you manage? He's like, I just in high school realized that I feel better. I'm more awake. I'm more alert. I'm just a happier person when I get like 8 hours of sleep, and I have to do that starting at 9 because I get up early, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right. And it just cemented something that, Dr. Ron said to our team,
Mm-hmm.
which is so much of this change has to do with recognizing the the benefits,
Mm-hmm.
right? So being conscious about writing down um, how you feel when you do something that you want to be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that kid just did it naturally, right?
Right.
He just
Mm.
naturally said, I just feel better when I get 8 hours of sleep and I go to sleep early enough that I can get 8 hours of sleep. I just feel better. I'm this, that. And he just remembers that. And through high school, he just developed that habit. And now in
Mm-hmm.
college, it's just second nature, right?
Yeah.
But it took some time. Anyway, so that's sort of what we're trying to do with Better Age with the folks that we work with. So we did just finish phase 1 of this NIH study,
Yeah. Let's
and
talk about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, we can't talk about all the details until we actually publish the study. That's part of
Okay.
the NIH rules, but we want to definitely kind of highlight a couple of things, kind of to preview the study.
Sure.
We asked people to do the assessment. They received the personalized report. We asked them some probing questions, and then we personalized their guidance and their actions.
Okay.
And then we followed them for 4 weeks, and we offered them weekly check-ins. Most people actually chose check-ins not uh, in person, but by email or text.
Okay.
After 4 weeks, people were telling us from the study that they had taken on new things over 50%, over 60, when Jim comes on, he'll tell you the exact numbers, but over 60% actually took at least one and many two actions based on the recommendations. After 4 weeks, people were coming back and telling us that they had gone to their doctor and their doctor thought that they looked 10 years younger than they were.
Wow.
I mean, it's incredible, right? This is not anything that we have actively done. We gave them recommendations that were personalized to them. They chose to do them because those recommendations resonated with them. They felt like we got to know them well enough to make these personalized recommendations. And then we did weekly check-ins with them, right? And that just light, LITE accountability was enough for them to follow through on a lot of the actions and take on new ones, right? So it's incredible when people choose to consciously do things on their own, right? A little bit of light accountability, not a heavy touch, right? It really can make a big difference in their lives, and it doesn't take a long time.
Yeah.
But over time, taking on new actions, achieving them, continuing on this process, right, really can pay off, like, in big health outcomes.
Yeah, yeah.
So now I say that's not part of the study, right? That's a continuous process for us to keep studying the efficacy of what we're doing.
Right, right. So I know that Jim Furman, your other co-founder, will be talking about this more in depth when he comes on in a couple of weeks. But just give us how many people were involved in this study? Just give us a brief preview of what Jim's going to talk about.
Yeah. So many more people were involved in focus groups and in-depth interviews and et cetera. So a lot of the that level of co-design led to a prototype. And that prototype was then piloted with over 45 older adults, half of them were drawn from the caregiver population, and half of them were non-caregivers. And there's a significant difference in how caregivers respond and non-caregivers. So that's something that we want to take a much closer look at. And I will say this. We are really interested in the caregiver population because it is growing. It is the backbone of the healthcare system, and I think that these are unsung heroes that go through a lot. So we would like to do as much as we can to support caregivers.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly something that I applaud, having produced this family caregiving guide, Caregiving Navigator, and so it's focused mostly on caring for older loved ones, family caregivers, the people who do it and are not paid to do it, although it is part of a as you guys know, a caregiving team with professionals. But I think this is something that I feel like it's still a nascent movement. So years ago we thought about, first we were parents, then we were caregiving parents, and then realizing that there were child care needs and what happens when culture changes and there are more women at work and how families change. And I think we're now we're looking at elder care, but I think we're making connections just as a caregiving population, the spectrum, because obviously as we live longer too, it's the spectrum of caregiving widens as well, from child care to, and sometimes even though your children are grown, you're still a parent and there are caregiving issues, and so people talk about the sandwich generation of caring for younger and older, and now I talk about the club sandwich generation, because older people can be taking care of yet older people, and I think that's happening. And to your point earlier about our children going to live to 120, it's like, wow, that's going to be a dramatic change. So I want to talk to do a quick wrap up, but we'll take a quick break and then we'll do a wrap up, and I'll give people contact information and so forth for you. So folks, we have one more quick segment with Diana Yin, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Caring for a loved one can feel overwhelming. That's why we created CaregivingNav.com, your personal guide through the complex world of caregiving. It's a free, interactive website built around the Caregiving Navigator book, with tools designed to make your journey easier. Whether you're planning ahead, managing care right now, or navigating a crisis, you'll find step-by-step advice, trusted resources, and over a dozen downloadable checklists. From legal planning to home safety, from medical decisions to emotional support, it's all here, all in one place. Just visit caregivingnav.com, because you're not alone on this path, and the help you need is just a click away.
Okay, folks, welcome back to 45 Forward. I'm your host, Ron Roel, once again, talking with Diana Yin, the CEO and co-founder of BetterAge. So we were talking about a lot of things before the break. I wanted to now just have Diana talk a little bit about sort of going forward. I mean, we have the pilot studies that you're rolling out, and your co-founder, Jim Furman, will be talking about that more in a couple weeks. But I just want to get some of your thoughts about, what's next for you? What do you think? Where a sense of not only for BetterAge, but more, broadly, what are our challenges? And we talked about caregiving. I think that is a big challenge, and I think we have to think about it in a much broader way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, we could do a whole segment on caregiving. I mean, I think, Ron, in terms of like the biggest challenges, I think that we are going to face an interesting duality.
Okay.
So on the one hand, we have people who are going to be facing information overload, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much information. I mean,
Right.
if like, you cough a little bit or whatever, you can absolutely find 16 different diagnoses online for why you might be coughing, right? And now with the pace of content generation, boosted by AI, it's even more information that's out there, and some to sift through, right? Because there is misinformation too about certain things. On the other side, you have an information gap, because during the pandemic, so almost virtually all health education moved online, right? Because there was no other way to deliver that health education. But there's a health information gap, right? Not everybody is digitally familiar. At least internet access is improving. So that part of the digital divide, I think, is getting better. But the digital familiarity and the digital literacy, along with health literacy, is still a big, big issue. And so you've got folks who are going to be facing information overload, and then you've got folks who still have information gaps. And how do we actually address both populations equally, right? How do we address both populations with what they need, right? And they don't need the same thing. So I think that's a big challenge, and it's one I feel like we are wanting to take on, by delivering information that people need at the right time, with the right sensitivity around their context, and directing them to sort of connecting them to the right resources.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I'm glad you brought that up. And I think that for me, the technology, at the very beginning when you were mentioning your chief technologist at BetterAge, I think, we need to think about it in terms of its usefulness. So I think it is true. So we talk about generally from the consumer, like, well, you're a digital native, or you're not, or you. And I think we're getting past the point where we just sort of assume older people aren't good with technology,
right?
Okay? Because I'm an older person, and I think so I think the baby boomers are kind of the break point where it has shifted, and it keeps going forward. And I think we're showing that if number one, in terms of older people using technology, it's like, well, they give them the reason to use it.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, you don't have the skills. Like, well, why would I use it? What is it useful for? And so I think, thinking about, how to really use technology well in caregiving, I think is an important, challenge for us, an opportunity for us. And also what you're doing at BetterAge is using, all this information in a way that provides a platform that directs people and say, well, this is what it's good for. This is how we can help use technology to create solutions or give people options or
Right.
direct them. Not just intimidate them with their lack of skill.
Yeah, right,
you know?
right. Yeah, right. Um, One thing we like to say is that we're hyper personalized and empathy first. And empathy is just meeting people at their level,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we try not to be judgmental about where you are. It's easy to be judgmental, but it's important not to be about,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
about where
Mm-hmm.
people are, and then meet them at that level, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things about personalization too is if we can get to know people better,
Mm-hmm.
then we can adjust how we communicate with them,
Right.
right? So that is actually one of the emerging um, I think one of the emerging benefits, we can say all you want about and a whole nother segment on AI, but one of the
Mm-hmm.
emerging benefits of AI is that you can start to personalize communication,
Right.
right? And how best to communicate with people, just like the translations, the varying literacy levels, the context and knowledge around health and well-being, right? So all of those aspects are now personalizable. So,
Yeah, and I think that so you're I think in your literature I noticed you use the term personalized population health, but personalized population well-being. I think by your getting people to focus and look at all these different domains that affect their well-being, it sort of it personalizes, but it gives them directions like, well, this is where you're
mm-hmm,
okay. This is well, maybe this can develop here, and I think in
mm-hmm.
that way it's a much more effective tool. Um,
I
that
hope so.
yeah, takes us beyond the sort of generic like, oh, I mean certain things, yeah, like getting 8 hours of sleep I think is generally a good idea. but but there are lots of other things that I think people can work on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad we've had this time together. So before we leave, I just want to make sure people have contact information for you and BetterAge, and how people can find out more about your company and your work.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, well, people can always reach out to me, Diana Yin,
Mm-hmm.
and it's diana.yin@betterage.net.
Okay.
You can also, if you don't want to email me directly, I totally get it. It's fine. You can also contact@betterage.net.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to our website, betterage.net.
Yeah. And what do people find on the website? What sort of stuff do you have on there?
Yeah, it's an overview of the Awareness, Action, and Achievement program.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a little bit about our origin story. There's a beautiful video on there about, the gift of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
being grateful for that gift of time. And that is
Mm-hmm.
where we start. Sometimes we forget we can live a long time, right? And we sort of, need to, appreciate what we
Mm-hmm.
call these bonus years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can also find a little bit more about our team. You can
Mm-hmm.
find out about our partners. You can read about our NIH grant there.
Okay.
Um, um, yeah, so it's a really you can download some product sheets if you want to know a little bit more about the product.
Great.
Unfortunately, the one thing you will not get there is access to the platform, just because, as I said before, we are
Yeah.
only offering it through partners at this
Right.
point.
Right.
Right.
But if people, I'm just thinking, in my audience, there might be some people who think, well, gee, it'd be nice to partner with them. Can they contact you and
Yeah.
to become a partner that way?
100%. The other thing, Ron, maybe I can do a little plug, is we are looking for folks who are interested in being in our beta group,
Hmm.
because eventually we think it would be important to offer it to older adults directly.
Okay.
So we are about to start a little experiment
Okay.
with what that experience feels like, and it's probably a different experience, because if you're already in an organization, you're with your local senior center, community center, what have you, you're already coming in through a trusted organization,
Mm-hmm.
right? But since we're a new startup, we're not a household name yet. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that is an ambition, right? At some point to become a household name so that
Right.
people trust us and they'll just go right on to betterage.net or whatever it is and, boom, get going. But we are experimenting with what that looks like if we're still kind of new to the field
Right.
and want to offer this for folks who are not associated with a community organization.
Nice. Okay. All right. So great. Well, thanks so much, Diana, for a terrific, thought-provoking conversation. I want to mention to people that if you go to my website, it's at Roel Resources, but if you just go to 45forward.org, you'll go to my archive and you can see all of my shows, including one, I can't remember the exact date, with Ron Kaiser, my other Ron, who was with BetterAge and the author of Rejuvenating, right? That's, I think,
Rejuvenating.
so if you want to listen to his podcast, you can go on there. It's at that point it was just an audio podcast, but you can still listen to him, and look onto my announcements about when Jim Furman is coming on. I believe it's in August, something like August 20th. But I'll let you know about that. So again, folks, thanks for spending this time with me and sharing my mission, which is to make the second half of life even better than the first. If you have questions for me, you can contact me at ron.roel@gmail.com. Send me comments, questions, suggestions for future shows. So again, join me next week when I'll be promoting my next show. But until then, keep moving forward, 45 forward.